Prophetstown was a Native American village that was established at the confluence of the Wabash and Tippecanoe rivers here in modern-day northwest Indiana. It was established by the Shawnee leader Tecumseh and his brother Tenskwatawa, known as the Prophet, and also the source of the village's name. When this was established in 1808, Prophetstown essentially acted as the heart of Tecumseh's Confederacy, and today we're going to be exploring that story. I'm currently walking through Prophetstown State Park here near the town of Battleground, Indiana. And today they have a reconstructed Native American village to give a little bit of an idea of how they may have lived here in this area when it was Prophetstown for those few years. Now for a bit of the backstory. After the American Revolution, the United States gained control of the Northwest Territory, which was a large region north of the Ohio River. Through the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, the federal government encouraged settlement and laid out a path for new states to enter the Union. As settlers moved west, they entered lands already inhabited by Native American tribes, leading to frequent armed conflict. The U.S. also acquired land through treaties, often made under pressure. One key example that's pertinent for today's visit is the Treaty of Fort Wayne in 1809, which transferred about 3 million acres to the United States. Many Native leaders opposed these agreements, most notably Tecumseh, a Shawnee leader. Tecumseh rejected the Treaty of Fort Wayne, arguing that no single tribe had the right to sell land that belonged to all Native peoples. He sought to unite tribes in a pan-Indian confederacy to resist American expansion and protect Native land. Yet despite his opposition, Tecumseh did not seek direct confrontation with the United States. In fact, in 1810, and even in the summer of 1811, Tecumseh met with Indiana's territorial governor, William Henry Harrison, hoping to find a resolution. After a summer meeting with Harrison in 1811, Tecumseh traveled throughout the region to recruit others to join his confederacy. Little did he know that later that year, conflict would erupt between American forces under William Henry Harrison and his brother, Tenskwatawa. Now, Tenskwatawa, known as the Prophet, led a powerful religious movement that called on Native Americans to reject American influence and return to traditional ways of life. His message gave spiritual strength to resistance against U.S. expansion. Along with his brother, Tecumseh, he helped establish Prophetstown. The settlement became a gathering place for multiple tribes and a symbol of Native unity and resistance. While Tecumseh worked to build a political and military confederacy, Tenskwatawa served as its spiritual leader. I'm now coming up on the reconstructed Native American village here at Prophetstown State Park. And it looks like there are a few buildings that we can check out. And it is a really beautiful morning. Not too cold, even for late December. I believe it's in the mid-40s right now, which will make this a little more of an enjoyable visit. But this is really beautiful. The park itself is huge. It's got a ton of walking trails and some other things to see outside of this village. But today, to learn a little bit more about Prophetstown and its role here in the region, we'll really just be focusing here on this reconstructed village. There's a really cool sign here titled the Woodland Indian Settlement that gives a lot of good history, not just about Prophetstown, but about the experience of these Native Americans in the late 1700s and early 1800s. And right off the bat here in the top left corner, we see probably the three most important figures from this period of history. And there in the top corner is Tecumseh, the Shawnee leader. To his right is his brother, the Prophet, Tenskwatawa. And beneath them, the territorial governor of Indiana, General William Henry Harrison. And the three of those men played an important role, of course the top two in the establishment of Prophetstown in 1808, but all three of them in the conflict that erupted and really took over northwest Indiana, culminating in the Battle of Tippecanoe on November 7th, 1811, which we will deep dive in the next video. But I also really like this map up here in the corner that shows all the various Native American tribes that occupied portions of modern-day Indiana. We've been talking a lot about the Shawnee, but you also had the Delaware, the Miami, the Potawatomi, the Kickapoo, and multiple other tribes. But we're going to go ahead and walk around and check out this reconstructed Native American village and hopefully learn a little bit more about what life would have been like here at Prophetstown. This first building here is labeled as the granary, also known as a corn crib, and it says that this structure was found in any Native American village and was used to dry and store corn, grains, and other foods throughout the year. Early settlers learned how to properly store their corn from Native people. And these granaries were built in many shapes and sizes, some above ground, some below. Food would have been stored in various ways, such as in baskets, bags, or buried in pits. Of course, I imagine all of these gaps here in the logs, they would have filled in with mud, straw, something to kind of weatherproof it a little bit more. But this is cool. It's neat that you can just come here and step into the buildings and walk around at your own pace. Over here in the center, they have a sign that talks a little bit about the different village structures. And here before us would have been essentially a cooking area where they would prepare and cook food here, primarily outdoors. And a cooking hearth provided space for large open cooking fires, with large heavy kettles that could be hung on different poles to control cooking temperatures. I've always been amazed by not just Native American, but also pioneer and colonial technology and techniques and the different ways that they would cook or live their lives. And oftentimes I'm pretty surprised about how simple but how effective these methods usually were. Today it looks like they have a little bit of a structure as well as a pot there. Another building here is labeled the Chief's Cabin. Most Native American tribes were led by a chief, and the chief would have a significant home in the village. He or she gained their authority by any of several means, including age, family inheritance, skill as a warrior, or by other significant deeds. And it looks like we may be able to go in this. I suppose pretty good accommodations, especially considering that you could just be sleeping outside. This here is neat. This is essentially a foot-operated vise in which a user could lift up this portion, place a piece of wood or something underneath it. They would put their feet on this bottom board and hold it down in place, which would free up both of their hands to utilize a knife or another tool. So again, just goes into some of that really fascinating and unique ingenuity in the technology that they utilized here in Native American villages, as well as during this time period throughout the country. But yeah, decent sized cabin. Just gives you a little bit of an idea of what things could have been like here at Prophetstown in those years that it existed from 1808 to 1811. I would have loved to have seen Prophetstown in its heyday and what it would have looked like in the space it would have occupied, because as neat as this reconstructed village is here, it gives you a little bit of an idea of what it might have looked like and where it was. I know it's nothing like what this actually would have been like, again, in 1808 to 1811. And it looks like the last building here is a medicine lodge. A medicine lodge is a place of religious ceremony and physical healing. It is a space separated from normal daily life. The construction of a medicine lodge is a ceremonial activity, and the materials used are treated with great respect and care. Some lodges are fully above ground, while others are partially buried. And this one's also open. We can go check it out. Oh, that's cool. So you have a place here at the center for a fire. And of course you need a way for the smoke to escape. So essentially a chimney there at the center. And this is a cool building. Looks like they also have some things here on the wall. Medicinal plants, the bountiful woodlands and prairies provided many wildflowers and plants needed to treat illnesses and health conditions. Some of the most common treatments dealt with skin problems, gastrointestinal disorders, toothaches, cold and flu symptoms, and even birth control. It's neat. It looks like all of these are labeled as to what they are. Ox-eye sunflower, which is a root, a stimulant, lung troubles. Of course, we have sassafras, root, so the root bark used to make a pleasant tea-like beverage, and the leaves used in meat soups for the bay leaf-like flavor. I really like how they have this here. Wild bee balm. The leaves would be used for headaches, the root and flowers for burns and skin wash, and the entire plant could be used for respiratory problems. That's cool. Again, it just goes back to you made do with what you had back then, and when it came to techniques and technology and things like this, utilizing the plants and wildlife around you, this is how it was done for most of human history. I think we get so used to modern medicine and technology, which is incredible, but I think we need to remember, going back to our roots, no pun intended, that really it was nature and everything around us, and you used what was available to you, and people just made do and they made it work. Of course, life expectancy back then was considerably less than it is now. But I will say we have plenty of unhealthy foods and unhealthy practices in today's world. So I think there's something we can learn from the Native Americans, as well as just human beings back then in the 18th and 19th century, for some of the things that they used to live their everyday life. I will say, just walking around this site, the silence is really deafening, other than the different flocks of birds flying overhead. It's a little eerie. Of course, I'm the only one out here. It's pretty early in the morning. But I don't know. It is peaceful, though, because this whole area being a state park, you have a lot of preserved land, which is wonderful. And this reconstructed village itself is just a unique sight. It's cool to get an idea of what this may have looked like and what life might have been like for some of those Native Americans that lived here at Prophetstown for those few years. I believe that I saw everything that is here, so we're going to go ahead and go down the road a little bit to check out a very important site, not just to the Native Americans, but to the prophet, Tenskwatawa himself, as well as a site associated with the Battle of Tippecanoe. All right, we're just a little bit down the road at a very fascinating site known as Prophet's Rock. Now, Prophet's Rock is a geological formation here that is not too far from Prophetstown, and this is where Tenskwatawa, the prophet, preached his religious message of native unity and resistance to American expansion. And specifically, on the eve of the Battle of Tippecanoe, which was fought on November 7th, 1811, Tenskwatawa stood on this rock formation, giving incantations and basically telling his warriors that they would be protected in battle against the Americans. Today, there is this really neat stone marker that was put into place in 1929 that reads, Prophet's Rock, where the prophet sat and sang to encourage the Indians in the Battle of November 7th, 1811. I'm actually going to go ahead and walk up the side of this to get atop of Prophet's Rock and this rock formation. Okay, I'm now standing atop Prophet's Rock, or at least the geological formation known as Prophet's Rock. And it doesn't look like it from street level, but I'm actually a lot higher up than I expected to be. So I can understand why this was such an important site to the Native Americans. And there across the street, you can kind of see that swampland, and off in that direction, not too far, just across Burnett's Creek, is actually the Tippecanoe battlefield. which we will be going down to in a little bit. But an important note is that Tenskwatawa did not actually lead the warriors into battle against William Henry Harrison and his force. He actually remained, I believe, in this general area on the high ground, observing the battle take place. But this is a really interesting site, and there's actually a lot of trails that kind of go throughout this as well. This is really cool, getting to stand atop Prophet's Rock and just imagine Tenskwatawa up here, all the warriors down below getting ready to go into battle against Governor Harrison and his men. It's just fascinating to be here on this site. And next, we're actually going to head down to the Tippecanoe battlefield to learn more about that fight that took place on November 7th, 1811.